Everyone's biggest questions: when will our international borders open? And while we now have multiple vaccines being administered around the country, it seems we are no closer to knowing the answer.
So will we ever treat COVID-19 like the flu? Epidemiologist Professor Tony Blakely joins us now for more. Good morning to you, Professor. At the moment, it seems the governments in Australia are focused on having zero community transmission. Do you think that's the right approach?
Yes, for the next few months at least. We want to keep it at zero because if the virus got in now, it would just take off again. Even when we get to 10 or 20% vaccine coverage and protected our most vulnerable people, the virus would still take off at that level. Once we get to about 40%, we don't know the magic number yet, so we'll have to work that out. Once we get to about 40%, we can start to relax then because the virus gets in, it'll be much easier to control it.
Well, the big question is, hit us with a number here, Tony. How many people need to be vaccinated before we open our doors to the rest of the world and say, come on down?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's not a yes/no. Let's use 40%. At about 40%, I think we need to watch what happens in other countries. We'll start to do things like let more people come in from countries that have low rates because they're lower risk, and for higher risk countries like the UK and the US, we'll allow them to come in perhaps with 7 days of quarantine with a test on day 5, and if they're okay they can go out, because at that point if the virus hits the soil in Australia it won't spread as violently. Once we get to 60–70%, again number not quite known, we can probably relax back to normal. Now, everything I've said there assumes that the vaccine will stop transmission as well as serious illness. Now, I'm very confident it will. The data's coming through that suggests it will. But again, this is not final. But the good thing here is that Australia can watch what's happening in other countries who are a bit ahead of us and learn from it. So that's a nice position to be in.
If we start letting people in when, say, 40% or 60 to 70% of the population is vaccinated, does that mean we have to start getting comfortable that there will be some level of COVID in the community?
Yes, we will. So let's use half. Half the population is vaccinated, for example. There'll still be pockets of people who are not yet vaccinated or not yet immune, and you'll see the virus pop up there, pop up here, but it'll be a lot easier to control because it won't spread like wildfire. It'll be easier for the contact tracers to get in there and dampen it out. And then once we get to 60–70%, somewhere around there, it'll be very small pockets when the virus comes in. But we will keep seeing this for years to come.
Yeah. We've had a couple of hiccups, which we were sort of expecting with the rollout. But what happens if it's delayed, past the October target?
Then everything just moves.
Yeah.
Look, we've seen with all the other countries doing it at the moment, everybody's having hiccups. This is a huge logistic exercise. If we actually got all our adult population, put kids aside because they're not quite on that phase yet, done by October, that would be tremendous. I'm not saying it's impossible, but really good. If we get everybody done by Christmas, other than the children again, I'd still think that was pretty successful, to be honest.
Yeah.
When we look at the efficacy rates of these vaccines, some of them are not necessarily preventing the illness altogether, they're just preventing the serious illness. Does that mean we have to get, that if we're at a point where nobody is being hospitalised or dying from COVID-19, that it is just treated like the flu or like the cold?
Okay, so there's a lot going on in your question there. Let's start with the vaccination part. We are seeing more evidence that the vaccine stops me getting it, passing it on without getting sick, as well as me getting sick. Now, here's the good news, is that as more people get vaccinated, those who are vaccinated and get infected will probably be less infectious for less time. And so there is a nice virtual spiral here that should see the transmission come down. That said, because this virus is so good at mutating, I would expect to see in a year's time there'll be a different variant, and just like influenza, we will need to have the vaccine updated, particularly the ones like the AstraZeneca, which are not as high as the Moderna and the Pfizer's in their vaccine coverage. So most Australians are going to have the AstraZeneca. I accept the fact that I'm going to probably have another round of it in a year or 18 months' time as we evolve to keep up with this virus, and that is okay.
Steady as she goes, you're saying. Tony, thanks for coming on the show today.